All right, we'll get started right here. So first things first, let me just click through here. The slides were not developed by me, but my colleague Ian. So I've made some adjustments to it. I try to follow along with it as much as possible, but there's going to be areas that if you have any questions or any doubt, anything that conflicts, please just raise your hand and let me know, okay? Don't hold back. There's only 8 of us today. The class will be from 9:30 in Calgary time, from 9:30 until 1 o'clock. So 3.5 hours. We will have a break. Likely it's going to be like an hour and a half and then a break and then another hour and a half. Okay. The break's going to be probably 10 minutes, but as if you've done the math, there's a couple of minutes here. So we will adjust depending on how well we absorb all the material. If we're not absorbing the material, I will slow down, or else I will keep going. Now, one thing to know about me, not so much what I do here, but one thing that's really, really important is that I have suffered a lot in Excel, a lot. When I graduated from university, I got sent to a job and they said, here's 8 spreadsheets. And then, read it up, understand our company, and we need reports by Friday. And I said, okay, are there instructions? No. Who developed them? Is there someone I can speak to? They're not in the company anymore. Okay. Yeah, you're an engineer. You figure it out. Okay, I see. So much like most of you, you ask your colleagues, you ask Google, you ask whatever source, YouTube, whatever resources you got in order to get things done. So all that suffering has built a lot of passion in me to pass on to you the better way to use Excel than just asking your friends and whatever solutions they've got. Okay, there's something that's really, really important in concept. That's the first thing I want you to know. Second thing is I'm a buffet guy. I love any all-you-can-eat steak places. So in Calgary, we have this Brazilian barbecue called Gaucho or Bolero, and they have a stick, red, yellow, and green, like a stick that you turn. And if you want the food coming, you keep it at green. If you want to stop, then you turn it to red, and you put it to yellow if you're like, bring it slowly. So I tend to keep it at green all the time. It's either all green or I go home. So I do the same with Excel. I get really excited, so I pass on to too much information. I'm like, hey, if you optimize this way and this, it will save so much of your time that it might overwhelm you as you're listening. So please, whenever you are getting stuck, whenever something is not making sense, feel free to raise your hand and make sure that that I stop. Okay, that I stop the food from coming. I want to pass on to you the best and the greatest because I don't want you to suffer in the same way as me. But at the same time, I don't want to go faster than the pace that everyone can go at. Okay, so hopefully that is okay. I am also looking in the chat right now. So if there's anyone in the chat putting questions, if you want to ask questions there, feel free to do that. But I think everyone is ready to go. Okay, so couple of animations from my friend here, but the whole point is this, okay? As we work in supply chain, we spend a lot of time, the 80-20, how much of the work that we do is actually relevant that people care about? And so we tend to do the 80-20. So a lot of times you work in supply chain and over time you feel like do you work for Excel or does Excel work for you? Because the more people you work with seems like the more spreadsheets that you get. And it's a lot of updating and a lot of getting used to people's formulas and things like that. So we want to turn this 80 to 20, 20% value add, 80% working and updating into something more the other way around. So like 80% of value add and 20% of, the updating and things like that. Now, on this slide, I know it's really crazy looking at all these things here. This is just your agenda for today. So I'm not going to stay here for very long, but I want you to kind of have an idea of what's going on for today. The first topic is going to be Excel tables, but please follow along the schedule. This is what I have in front of me as well that I'm following time-wise. Okay. Right. Without further ado, some Excel tables. Now, I don't know how many of you use tables or Excel tables. There are at least, I would say, if you look at here, there's at least one, two, three types of tables in Excel, and they're all different. They're not really related directly. Um, in the very beginning, when you look at Excel spreadsheet, it looks like this. And if you go down to the bottom of the rows, there's like record of 1 million rows and I think like 32,000, 1,032,000 rows, something like that. And then column wise, there's only about 16,000 columns. Only about 16,000 columns. Why is that important? This is really important because not just the limit of Excel, but the way that the Excel sheet is made is actually really, really long in the rows and really, really narrow in the columns. Why is that? Well, because Excel was made for two purposes and two purposes only: data storage and data analysis, period. You can use Excel for anything you want, for sure, presentations, things like that. But to be most efficient at using Excel and having, everything update by itself, you need to use it properly. And what that means is you need to store majority of your data vertically, and then the dimensions of your data. So dimension meaning like, what are the additional information to this data? If you look at my screen right now, you see supplier name, tier, category. Those are all additional dimensions to this information. But then vertically, you have all sorts of suppliers and it grows and it grows and it grows. It's very important to note that vertically is how you grow your data, and horizontally is how you keep your data, in terms of dimensions. Okay. And so there is a limit here on each sheet. However, as you get into Power Query tomorrow and Power Pivot, I don't know if has anyone heard of these two tools in Excel? Have you used Power Query or Power Pivot before?
I haven't, no.
You haven't. Okay. So these are tools that have come around. It's been around for a long time, like 10 years. Okay. And they're fantastic tools that very few people that I teach are using today. So hopefully we'll get into more of this. But when you look at a sheet like this, the limit is 1 million rows. Yes. But when you get into the Power series, so Power Query and Power Pivot, it actually has no limit in its rows. No limit. The limit of Excel becomes the limit of your computer. So depending on the capacity of your computer is how many rows it's going to be able to digest, which is really, really exciting. Okay. But again, when we look at the sheet like this, please note the way we're supposed to be using this data is we're supposed to enter lots of data vertically and hopefully the same data type. Like if it's numbers, it's all numbers. If it's text, it's all text. You can type whatever you want in Excel, but if you mix data types in here, for those of you that have worked with Excel a long time, you know what kind of problem you get into as soon as you sort or filter, because Excel can only deal with one data type at a time. So then you end up having all the numbers at the bottom, all the text at the top. Even this is particularly a big example when you deal with dates. Okay, when you deal with dates, we'll go into this a little bit later. But you have a sheet like this, then you turn the sheet into something like this. And when you first look at this, you're like, this is the same thing, just colors. So just so you know, formatting is really it's nice to have, but it's not the most important part in Excel. What is important in Excel is how you store the data and what type of data you store in it. What you make the color to be, how you change the font size and all that, that's not the important part in Excel. Excel is able to store all that. The important part is the dimension, the way that you store the data. So you see here an Excel table, and then in less than 60 seconds, when I show you this, to make an Excel table is really, really easy. We'll get to that. And then you have here pivot tables, which I hope has put up your hand if you have worked with pivot tables. You work with pivot tables, or you've never. If you have not, don't put up your hand. If you work with pivot tables, put up your hand. If you have not, don't put up your hand. Perfect. I got 5 hands up here. So, okay, put your hands down. So pivot tables, not to worry. We'll go into this probably today, tomorrow. But pivot table is kind of a quick way, user-friendly way of analyzing your data. Okay, but we'll go into that a little bit later. So you have Excel tables, which is an actual table. Tabular data that you saw in the beginning, that sheet, that's not a table at all. Even though it may look in the dimension, it could look like a table, and you can even format it and make it colorful and look like a table, but that's not an actual table. A real table in Excel is the Excel table you saw, the pivot table that is here on the screen, and then the data table that is crazy looking over here. And the data table is completely different than the other tools. This is where we do like sensitivity analysis, like profit and losses, things like that. That's why you have like conditional formatting to see that in the picture. So it's analyzing a formula and then displaying the results to you, let's say. Okay, so very different tables. All right, so if you don't mind, I'm just gonna open up my first sheet. You don't have to do anything. I just want you to look on the screen with me right here, right now. Okay, so can everyone see this okay? I hope you can. If not, put up your hand, okay? So we have this 1, 2, and 3. As we were talking about in the beginning of a spreadsheet, so people spend a lot of time, doing this kind of thing. They make it nice and formatted, and they merge cells, and just in case you don't know about merge cells, this looks great, and they probably spend like 40 minutes doing this, hopefully not more. This is completely killer in Excel. All this formatting is totally unnecessary. It can look good on the presentation, but when you start to analyze this information, you're going to have really, really big problems. Okay. And I'll show you this right away. So if I highlight all of this right now, normally if we're to sort this or filter this, we would go up to data, right? And we hit the filter button. I'm not going to teach you that because that's really, I'm very lazy. So if there's quick keys to do things faster, I don't like to click a lot. So all you have to do right now is Control Shift L. Control Shift L, okay? If you want to try this out, you can open this 01 contiguity test from the file. You don't have to, but if you want to try this, because if you've never seen this quick key before, you're free to open this file on your own and do this with me. But this is not a step-by-step, okay? So I throw on the filter, great, wonderful. This first section that says chemical instrumentation and I got supply. If I filter in here and I say, okay, give me chemicals, and you'll see like, wait a minute, isn't chemicals like the whole thing? Why is it only giving me one row? Well, it's only giving you one row because somebody decided that it was cool to format it and merge it into, what happens when you merge it is you're saying basically all these cells here, 11 cells, is going to be all erased and it's going to be with the address B13. So you actually only have one row of data entered in that first column. So when you go and filter and sort in this section, it's going to give you a lot of problems because this is not a proper data set that Excel needs in order to analyze information. So if you go from 1 to 3, 3 is what we need. Okay, and 3 is what we call contiguous. So what contiguous, I know it's a term that I have a hard time pronouncing. What it means is that it has no empty rows, no empty columns, no merged cells. If you look at the first and the second, there's empty rows here, there's empty rows here, there's empty columns here on the second one, there's empty columns here on the second one as well, and the third one has no merges, and no empty rows and empty columns. So to prepare for a table creation is really, really easy, but the process is basically you should not have any merged cells. I'll show you later on how you can still show this merging effect without actually clicking the merge button that is here, okay? But if you merge it already, then it's kind of the data is already messed up and you have to clean it up. So message number 1 is if you want to have a table, you need to make sure that you have no empty rows, no empty columns, no merged cells. If you do, you have to delete them. Now, how do I check for contiguity other than visually seeing it? Because sometimes people will do this, and I'm clicking on column D right now. If I want to add a column in here, I can right click and insert here, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to Control plus. And when you do Control plus, it adds in a column by itself. If you do Control minus, then it deletes that column. Okay? All this is in your quick keys. Just give it a highlight so that you can go back and use it. If I were to do something like this, and this sometimes comes up in spreadsheets, and I hide it, and if just so you know, the quick key for hiding is Control 0. And Control 0, the 0 is not in your keypad. The 0 is the numbers above your alphabetical orders. So if I Control hide, this looks like If I were to remove, these empty rows here, it might look contiguous, as in there's no empty columns between these. This is killer. Why? Because if I Control Shift L, which is applying the filters and sort, if I Control Shift L again, you'll see the drop down only happens in the first two. What does that mean? That means if I go and sort this first column, I can mix all my records, segregating all the information that's in each row. So J plus energy that was supposed to be in the first row, if I were to sort this right now, I'm not going to do it right now, but if I were to do that, then this supplier number is going to be disconnected from all the rest of the data. Why is that? Well, because the data actually has hidden column. I'm going to do this. I'm just going to Control Z, Control Z, Control D to undo. So because somebody added an extra column for formatting purposes and things like, and they decide to hide things, what they have created is lots of non-contiguity. So lots of disconnections in your data set. When Excel looks at this, it doesn't see one data set. It sees one data set right here at the top in this supplier C11 by itself, disconnected from this information here. And then I see another data set over here, these two. Whenever there's a border that segregates it, this is now another. So this is actually like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different data sets that don't belong to each other at all. Now this is killer, because now if I were to run a sort and filter, you saw the effects. If I were to run a pivot table, I wouldn't even be able to pivot properly, because pivot table doesn't even know that all your information is related to itself, because you have these empty columns. So you're going to have a lot of garbage in, garbage out analysis, basically. So to create a table is what we need. But to get to the table means we have to remove all these junk from our data set, whether it's downloaded or whether someone actually added these in manually. If I have a table like this, it is very easy for me to sort and filter. This is one data set. If I go here and I Control A, Excel knows this is one data set and one data set only. And it keeps its respective position from N to O to P, and it's not going to mix it unless you force it to mix it. Let me show you how easy it is to make a table. All you have to do is click this, insert, table, and that's all you have to do. You don't have to do this right now. We'll go to the step by step and show you. The quick key, as I hope you've seen by now, I love quick keys. So all I have to do right now is Control T. And when I Control T, very important to slow down here and see that it says my table has headers. My table has headers. If you don't check this blue button here, what it will do is it will assign you a column header. So it will say column 1, column 2, column 3. Much like if I were to add a new sheet, it will say sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3. Every single table must have column titles at the very, very top. If you don't assign it, then Excel itself will assign for you, which is bad, because then that means category is going to become one of your contents. Integrated oil sands is going to be on your content. So all of the titles, if you don't check this, then these content will become the contents of your data set. So if I do this, so what happens is some coloring. Now, it's really easy to create a table, Excel table. How do I know this is a table versus like this? Well, because when I click on this section, any of this section here, at the very top in my ribbon section, you won't see table tools or table design. You'll see, if I click on this section, you see how it says table design here? This is really, really important. So why is it really important? Because any objects, so if you create a graph, if you create a slicer, or if you create a pivot table, every time you create an object in Excel, it will have its associated tools at the top. And only when you click on the object will the associated tool pop up. Now, to create a table is really, really easy. That's not the important thing. Although you need to make a table for many things. The important thing is, how do I use this table after I create it? Now, before we go into the step by step here, I want you to know this, okay? Normally, and for decades and decades and decades, people use an Excel spreadsheet like this. They'll say, okay, this guy, right? Maybe I'll do like a sum, okay? I don't want you to do this. I just want you to know, like, what I'm doing is crazy, okay? But we do this, in many companies will do this sum, and you see this J12. Let me see if I can make it bigger. You see this J12 to J26. So what happens when you have non-table, you have a regular range like this, no name ranges, no tables, is that you always have to rely on these addresses. This is huge because what happens if you add a column? What happens if you add a row? Will this address update properly? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Well, how do we make sure that it never gets into trouble? Well, we can highlight this address and I can F4, so when I add F4, don't worry, we're not going to formulas yet. But when I do F4, what happens when is these dollar signs gets added into here, which looks really scary, right? But when you do this F4 many times, it iterates through different locking combinations of the addresses. So when you lock the addresses, you are trying to prevent these addresses from moving. However, what if I have to update? I have to update one more row. Well, then this locking mechanism, if I add the row in the middle, no problem. This address will add in no problem. If I add in the row at the bottom or the top, well, the address doesn't know that that's part of our data set. So it will stay at 26 and it won't go to 27 or 28, which means your data is outdated and that your update is not taking place. So you have to manually come to this address and update it. And it's brutal. If you've done this before, I feel you're suffering. Don't do it. If you do this, please let me help you save your day. Okay. If you do this kind of craziness, don't do it, because if you keep on relying this process, yes, there are sometimes you do it, but if you do this, updating will always be a challenge. Look at what happens here. If I move over to here, let me make this a little bit bigger. So if I put up here equals, let me move over a couple cells so you can see better, equals average. And I highlight this. And I close the bracket. Do you see what happens? The addresses disappear. Well, table one conventional, what is that? Well, what happens is when you start to create a table, it moves away from all the addresses that you used to do. And now it only cares about, well, what is your table called? Well, your table is called table number. I didn't name that. Could I change the table name? Yes. But if I change it now, when I use it in the formula or a pivot table or a graph depending on how you want to use it, I no longer have to refer to addresses, which means my updates are going to be faster and more accurate. And it actually can update by itself if you think about it. Well, what do you mean, Jason? Well, first of all, when I click on this table right now, I look up at the table design. Only when you click on the table will you have the table design. When you click on the table design, on the very left-hand side, you'll see a table name. You'll see a table name there. And that table name, let me just move this down. This table name, oh, I lost my Excel sheet. Let me bring it back. That table name there, you can easily erase it at any time. And I could put in Jason if I wanted to. And you don't have to hit enter. You don't have to hit save. And all you have to do is just type Jason. Okay. And so now, and Helena had sorry, I didn't see her question earlier there. Her question is Power Pivot the same as pivot table? The answer is yes and no. And you'll see in a second. It is a pivot table, but not quite.
Okay.
It's more like Access.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. I threw that in the chat just in case you see it.
For sure. But
Hi, Jason. Sorry to bother you.
yes.
This is Jigar. Jose was in the waiting lobby for a while. And
Oh.
I've just admitted him in, so he just joined.
Okay.
I'm really sorry, Jose, for not getting.
Oh, sorry about that. I didn't see. I thought I had only 8 students. Welcome, Jose.
Thank you.
So Jason, if you can put him up to speed and just give him a gist of what's happening, that'd be great.
Sure, no problem. Jose, I just want to make sure that you have downloaded the file. The file meaning the Excel course files here that was in the link.
Already there.
Make sure that you have downloaded that onto your
Yeah.
desktop and don't work from the email, okay?
Yeah, for sure.
I'm just on the first file here, 01 contiguity test, and then I'm gonna ask you to open Excel tables very shortly. So
Okay,
make sure you have that.
no problem. Thank you.
Okay, so to create a table is really easy and it's really important. So I hope you guys are getting this. If you want to avoid update issues and address issues, make sure you make your data a table. All you have to do is click on the data, once there's no empty rows or columns, and Control T to make a table. Now, that table can remain renamed as whatever you want, as long as there's no numbers starting, as long as there's no spaces, or also it'll put it in like underscore for you. I've renamed this table from table 1 to Jason. So now I can just do average Jason, and you can see already my name is right here. And the interesting thing here is it no longer cares about like P12 and P13 and P14, the exact row, because all it needs to know is what is your table called. Then as soon as I put a square bracket like this, you will see that I can pick, what can I pick? Well, the name, just much like pivot tables, the category, the column names. And when I call the names, so for example, this one here, then what it'll do is it'll process every single one of these as an array into my average. This is my addressing. So I no longer just say, oh, you know, from here to there. And what's important to this, most important to this, is that when I update at the bottom, let's say I add Jason's class, okay? And I'll say like 88% and 100%. You can see that this table continues to grow vertically down. Let me roll up a little bit on this bottom of this table. You see this little corner? As long as you keep putting data just at the bottom of it, it will keep on growing, 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 growing. And what is the beauty of that? The beauty of that is I don't care in my update. I'm going to just show you my address here. I don't care how many things you update at the bottom because I have made this into an object called a table. And I know this object, this table is called Jason. And I know that you have a column that you want. As this column continues to grow, my added information will automatically be updated in here. And I never worry about, oh, I forgot to add a row. Oh, I forgot to add a column, because now it's named. Okay, so this is kind of the starting point and the biggest advantage of having a table, even though it's so easy to make. But if you think about this in another application sense, when you make this data, let's say into a pivot table, in the pivot table, I'll do this really quickly. If you don't know how to make a pivot table, do not worry. All I'm doing here is selecting the data that I have and going to insert pivot table. I just want to show you something here. Normally in this table range section here will be an address, and it'll say like your sheet name, like contiguity test, and they'll say the address like P1 or N11 to P23 here. But you can see that it doesn't say that. What does this mean? This means whatever additional information I add to this table here, if I were to make a pivot table from the table itself, my pivot table will automatically add in the new rows, or if I were to delete rows, it will automatically update with the lesser or more, but it will update with the latest information that I have on the sheet. I don't have to worry about addresses. I don't know if I've convinced you that this is really important and you need to do this, but it is very important in very important in the Lego block. If you have a table created in Excel, it is literally a Lego block that will allow you to build a database or a castle or some kind of quick update that does not require any manual work of, you know, copy and pasting or updating addresses. I hope you guys understood what I just said. But I never trust myself or my audience. So let's get to some practice, shall we? Okay. So moving on to the Excel file 02 Excel tables. If everyone can please open that up on your Excel spreadsheet, on your computers, and put up your hand if you have it open. Perfect. I got 2 hands, 3, 4. Six hands up so far. Armand. Hopefully you can hear. I saw that you say you can hear me. Jose's in there. Okay, everyone's good. Perfect. We're all ready to go. Hands down, please. Okay, so let's do a hands-on of how to. So if I talk too fast, please voice it. Let me know. I don't want you to be like, oh yeah, I got it. And then in the next break, you're like, no, I don't got it. So anytime you don't got it, stop me, okay? Verbally or by hand. Corey, are you okay? Your hand's still up, so I hope you're okay. Corey, you still there? Your hand's still up. I hope you're okay. Oh, okay, perfect. All right, so on this sheet right now, let me just tell you what is on the sheet, okay? You have a set of instructions at the very top, like 1, 2, 3, 4 to 7, which we talked about previously, okay? You do not have to follow these steps, okay? Just so you know, everything in Excel, understand the concept, don't memorize. Never memorize, okay? It's easy to look up how to anywhere, okay? But the concept of when should you use a tool and why should you use a tool trumps over everything. All you need to know is what does that tool do? And then you can look up the how to later. So these steps are to help you, but if you want to use steps that are, you reverse these steps or do steps in a different way, that is okay to do. There are 3 tabs here. First one is original data. Second one is convert to Excel table. The first 2 sheets are exactly identical. And the reason for this is we're supposed to work on the second tab called convert to Excel table, because this table, this is our sandbox. If you mess up, you can always make another copy of the original data to kind of play again. And then the third tab this is where we want to get to. Okay. So we want to go from this that we see to the answer here that we see. Okay. So I'm going to break some rules here as well. As in, like, I will try to follow this as best as I can. But let me just say something here before we continue. I'm going to do step by step with you. If I were to follow this step and say remove empty rows, okay, then, what's the quickest way? Like, do I, manually highlight? Do I go like this column here and this column here, or actually, those are not empty. This one here is empty and this one here. My point is, do I do this manually? Because isn't this not the point of Excel, is manual work like this, and then hit right click delete? You would be right. I would not do this manually. If you want to follow this, you probably will do that, and then you would say like, oh, this column here, delete that. This column, delete. Can we do things a little bit more efficient than this? These steps that are given you. First thing I would do. Go to the merge section. So B18, click on that. Go to the mechanical engineering, go to the project management section. So all those sections here. Or if you want to click the whole column, you could do that as well. There's no one trick like you have to do this because Jason said so. No, this is Excel. It's an art. After you selected all those merged cells, I want you to unmerge it. And where is the unmerge? Is home. And then in the middle section where it says alignment, it says wrap text and unmerge. I want you to uncheck both of them. Uncheck both of them. Okay. And if you want to be sure, like, what about this one? Is that merged? Oh, that looks like it's merged too. You know what? You could just say like whole thing, all the data, and make sure you select all the data here. And you say like, you know what? Please unmerge everything. Like, I don't want anything merged. And that's it. So make sure that all of it is selected and it's all unmerged and it's all not wrapped. And why are we doing this? We're doing this because we want to make sure that there's nothing hidden. There's no overwriting of addresses that merge and center does. And you'll see something like this. Yes, I want to remove all those empty rows and empty columns, all those empty rows and systematically, whether I have, like, I don't know how many rows of data I have here, or 10,000, 100,000 will be done the same way. So I've unmerged everything, but you see that there's like empties here. You're like, oh my gosh, empties here. This is crazy, right? It's terrible, like empties here. So technically what I need to do is I need to like fill them down. I need them to say like civil engineer. I can write an if statement or something complicated, but I don't need to. All I have to do is the following. I highlight all my information here in the first column as I did. So B, I highlighted B17 all the way down to B59. And I'm just going to pause, just make sure everyone's on the same page. If you're not on the same page, put up your hand, okay? All I did is I merged everything. unwrapped everything. I highlighted B17 to B59. If you're not on the same page, please let me know by a hand up. Okay, everyone's on par. I can use quick keys, but I'm gonna do the slow way first and I'll show you the quick key after. I go to home. I go to editing section called find and select. And I'm just gonna pause just so I don't lose anybody. So I highlighted those cells. I went to home, find and select. And then when I click it open, I have these options. I want to go to special. Go to special. Okay. And then you'll see go to special has all these options in here. I want to click on blanks. Blanks. What's this doing is it's going to select all the sections that are blank that you see, these blanks. Okay. And all I'm going to do is say, okay. And you can see that in my selection now deselects all those ones that have some kind of entry in it. And all I have to do now is I want to be careful here. And it's really important, this following step. Beside your back button in your keyboard, there's a plus and an equal sign. Click on equal sign. And then using your arrow that's between your keypad and your alphabetical ABCD, the up, down, left, right, press up. Okay. If you're not with me, please put your hand up. Okay. Everyone's with me, I think. Then don't do anything except hold down Control key and enter. Hold down Control key and then enter. And what you'll see is B18, 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 and you're like, Jason, is not working. It's supposed to say civil engineer, civil engineer, civil engineer, civil engineer, and then mechanical engineer. It's not working. Why is it not working? Now, I did this on purpose. The reason why it's not working in this matter is because Excel is very good at storing data and analyzing data, but it depends on what type of data. Currently, civil engineering here, if I click on civil engineering B18 and I look up at home and then I look at the number section, it is being stored as a text. And when it's being stored as a text, it is already decided that is a text. And text is very difficult for calculations and difficult for updates. If you look at this, this says B18. Shouldn't B19 say civil engineering? Why is it saying B18? Is this a trick? And it kind of is, but the most important part is you need to know what kind of data set you're dealing with. So you know that I've showed you this is a text. So I have to first do this. I have to turn these civil engineering, mechanical engineering, project management. I have to make sure that these are not text, but they're general. General. Okay? If you are not following me, please let me know. But we just went through the steps of how to fill down the blank cells, and it's not working. So I said, well, because they're text, the formula is not able to run properly when they're text like this. So I selected all the text that is in B18, B35, and B51. And I went over to home and I turned them to general. What general means is undecided. So it's not being stored as a number. It's not being stored as a text. But depending on what we need in the formula, it might store one way or the other. Now, if I were to take all these B18s and delete them, the formulas, all these, delete them. And sorry for going around here, but I'm going kind of step by step because I know that when I don't do these step by steps, people will get into issues like this and say, it's not working for me. Okay. And particularly why this doesn't work. And this applies in many places in Excel. A formula usually doesn't work because the data type that is asked to be used in the formula doesn't match. And so you get an error because the data that's being stored is not what's expected in the formula. So you get into errors like this. So it's very, very important that you know what kind of data type you're dealing with. Now, going back to this first section again, I will again highlight B17 all the way down to B59, the same as I did before. If you're lost, please let me know, but I've turned these B18, B35, B51 into general as the data type. Then I've highlighted the same way as I did before, everything. So everything being B17 all the way to B59. Then I go to home, I go to find and select, I go to special. The quick key is Control G. Control G. And then below it says special. And it'll take you to the same place. We click on blanks. We press OK. It's now all selecting on the blanks. Yes? Now here's the important part. We click on the equal sign. So beside the back button, there's a plus and equal. Click on equal sign and press up. So it's saying equals B18 again, yes? And we're expecting that this time will work. And fingers crossed, if I do Control Enter, of course. Of course, when I run it in class, it doesn't work. So it should say civil engineering all the way down. And then here
For
it
me.
says mechanical engineering all the way down. Someone, I hear
Oh, I
someone.
just said it worked for me.
It works for you?
Yeah.
If it works for you, it should say all the same data types below. So civil engineers all say the same thing. Mechanical engineering all say the same thing. Project management all say the same thing. If it worked for you, put up your hand. It didn't for me, as you said.
It didn't work for me, but nothing came up. It's just blank.
You have to make sure that when you're doing the after the equal sign and then pointing up at B18, that you hit the control button before you hit enter.
I think that maybe it's not working because it's all the blanks are listed as texts.
Awesome. Let me try that.
When I switched one, it fixed it.
Let me try your possibly, yeah. Let me try your theory here. I'm going to change all these, blah, 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 and change it to a general. And I'm going to do the same thing. Home, find and select, go to special, blanks, okay. Then equal sign, up arrow 1, hold down control, enter. And there it is. You're right. So did everyone, so I want you to, I want to hit into this problem on purpose. So I want you to try until you can do this in the next minute or two. And if you have gotten the correct fill down, put up your hand. If not, try it again. I got 3 hands up here. I got Heather on it. So give it a try, okay? Perfect. Good. 4 hands up. So again, it's really, really important, each of the cells, what kind of data type is expecting. If you don't put the proper thing, as you see, fail, fail, and then now it works. Okay, I got 5 hands up, 6 hands up.
I get an error message.
What does the error message say?
It just says, I don't know, there's just a little like triangle error.
Triangle error. Interesting. It maybe is your Excel file the one that's from the online?
No, I managed to download it to my computer, but maybe it's because it's a work computer.
And it's enable editing. There's no yellow tab at the top. Yes.
No, it's
Okay.
able. It just says the cell contains a formula and it is not locked to protect it from being changed inadvertently.
Oh, okay. So it's not allowing you to edit. Maybe what I would suggest is save that file under your own name and then reopen it again. So then, because if it's going to be non-editing, it's going to give you problems throughout the whole course.
Oh, it lets me edit it. Just it's in
Is
a
it
read
the
only.
same one that you have, Jason? On B19, there's a little green corner.
Oh, like this? Is this?
I think that's
that-
what we're talking about.
Yes.
Is that what? So for this, in this case, so right now, you can ignore this error. Don't worry about that.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So I have all the information I need. So now now this data set, you can see that there are no empty rows. Okay. But there's still empty columns. So right now, if I do Control A, you can see that my data goes all the way to the first empty column, which sucks. Yeah. So I'm going to get rid of these. H and L. Okay, I'm going to highlight H and L. And let's try the quick key, Control minus. Control minus is to delete columns. And put your hands down if you have deleted the 2 columns successfully. Perfect. So highlight H and L, hold down Control minus from your number keypad, and it should delete those columns. Okay. Now, if I go back to B17 again, Corey, I hope you're okay. Your hand's still up. So if you need me to wait for you, I can. But now if I do Control A, you see that it selects the entire data set, which means it's in a way contiguous, but not quite yet. As you can see, there's empty rows and empty columns. And so now if I use the quick key, Control Shift L, to apply filters at the very top of this entire data set, I can see like, okay, these empty rows. Well, which columns, or sorry, which rows contain empty? So I can see 18 has empties. This one is a title. It's not really necessary. I go down to here, this empty here, and then I get another row here. So, well, because I have a filter, couldn't I just say like, give me all the empties and delete them? Yes, of course. So I can say, hey, empties, you show up, highlight, and bye-bye. And then I unfilter my level. And now it's a little bit cleaner, but not quite. And just so you know, I gotta be careful here. Just so you know, this first data set that I filled down, because it's still there are still formulas here, I have to make sure that, I forgot this step. You have to make sure that this is copied and pasted as values, or else you will lose, you'll get an error, right? Because as I'm deleting rows, it's referring to a blank deleted row. It's going to give you errors. So make sure you highlight all the fill down that you got, copy and paste it as values. And when you do, the green tab will disappear. If you have gone the way I did and you've lost, you're kind of lost to the steps, you can Control Z to go back until you see these fill down again, and just copy and paste that as value so we don't lose it.
Can you just show that copy paste one more quick time?
For sure, for sure. So go back until you see that section and just copy, just the right click copy, and then right click, paste 1, 2, 3 right there. There's many, many different ways of doing this, okay? This is just the kind of the long way of doing it. Are we all on the same page? If not, please put up your hand, okay? So I have one data set with the fill down all as one type of data. So if I Control A, I should see the whole thing light up, even though I still have empty rows in here. There's no empty column, so it knows it's one data set. Then I'm going to do again. I'm going to go to the level, the column D, the levels column. I'm going to look for blanks. Oh, the other way around. Blanks. So I'm going to filter for blanks. I'm going to remove the blanks. And I'm going to clear my filters. So you can see that all those empty rows are now gone with the subtitles. And I still have these row function, right? So I can say, hey, is there any more? So you can see like I have this at the top, I have civil engineering, I have function, and then, but I see this function and this function here. I don't want those. So I could filter in the first column for functions similarly as I did before. And you can see like the top one still remains because it knows it's the title, but the bottom is repeating. So now I can do the same thing and say bye-bye, delete. And then I can clear my entire filter. And now you can see it's coming closer and closer and closer to my answer, which has no empty rows and no empty columns. Now to make this into a table, if everyone's okay, it's really, really easy. All you have to do is click on one cell and make sure you do this, okay? Click on one cell, never 2 or 3 like this. If you do 2 or 3 or 6 like this or 10 like this, what happens is Excel is thinking that you're saying that this highlighted section needs to become a table away from the rest of the data set, which is not true. So always click on one or Control A or all, but never 2 or 3. So I'm going to click on 1 just to make it simple. And to make it a table, Control T. And you'll see the whole data set highlighted. But remember, the most important part for this step is make sure that my table has header is true and that you do see the titles at the top. And they're all unique. And there's no empty spaces. So if you see like a Pega space like that, don't worry. It will add in by itself and underscore for those spaces. Okay, but there's no repeats. So for example, level, you don't have another level in any of the columns. So my table has headers, true. I leave it checked. I press OK. Now you see that I have some kind of formatting, like coloring added to it. Remember, formatting is really irrelevant in Excel. When I click outside on any blank area beside it, you'll see the table design disappear. When I click back to the table, you'll see the table design appear. Remember, the most important part is how to use this table, not to create. To create it is really easy. We just did. Now, before I go further to complete kind of our creating a table, and I'm going to go into how to apply it. When we look at this table right now, how do I get rid of this table? So I created a table, maybe I made a mistake and I want to go back. How do I go back? You can undo to try to do that, but the proper way is if you go up to table design at the very top, on the very left-hand side under remove duplicates, summarize with pivot table, under all that, there's something called convert to range. Range is what we begin with when we didn't have a table. So convert to range means go back to its regular range without a table structure, without a table. So if I do this, convert to range, it says, are you sure you want to convert table to a normal range? Yes. When you go back, everything looks the same. Nothing has changed. The only thing that's different is when I click outside, there's no table design at the top. When I click inside, there's nothing at the top, no table design either. So this table, whatever, if I named it as JSON, if I named it as table 1, the formulas will fail because this object no longer is there. So just so you know how to make a table and how to reverse it. So now if I were to go back to making a table, I Control A and Control T. Is this my table? Yes. If I press OK, you'll see that nothing changes. Everything's the same. Except this time at the top, I'll see table design. And I want you to name this table name with your name. Anything you want. So on the very left-hand side where it says table name, put in your name. Put in your name. And now note that if you were to say something like equals average, and you put in your name and try it, and put a square bracket, you'll note that this object that you made now you're able to call it up anywhere you are on this book for use. Now, is that all there is to tables? No, this is the beginning. This is the first Lego piece. Now, just following this instructions here, the last column here asks you to calculate the charge out fee. So what we have here is different functions, different rows, seniority, category, years of blah, blah, blah. And what it's asking you to do is, can you add up these for me? And so one thing that I want to point to as soon as this is, if I go into K18, I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger, and I put an equal sign. And I point at, I want to add H plus I plus J, okay? And so I will say like sum this to this, and I'll close the bracket. But as you do this though, you can see that it doesn't care about addresses anymore, does it? It starts to say the name of the object table, then your name, and it says at. Why does it say at? It says at instead of like, for example, JSON, the full name. At means which column are we talking about? So at means base rate, which is the name of the H column, base rate with burdens, you see? And then has a square bracket, then it says to profit. So from this column to profit, it doesn't care how many rows there are. It'll process it in the same way. And the other thing that is interesting is when you hit enter, it doesn't need any fill downs. It automatically fills down by itself. Pros and cons to this. Pros, I don't have to fill down. Cons, if you have a different formula that isn't here, Let me just show you what I mean. If you have a different formula that's written in every single row in here, what will happen one day when you open this file is the data will look different. Why? Because every single time when you open this file, this fill down will automatically fill down and overwrite any different formulas. So again, pros and cons. Pros, that it will automatically do it. Cons, you shouldn't have different formulas in one column. Maybe you say, no, but I need it. If you do, then we have to think of other ways to overcome this con, because it will automatically fill down. That's the way it functions. Okay. If I add in another row, this calculation will automatically fill down by itself without my intervention. But be careful with this, because they will do that all the time. Okay. I'm going to flip back. So I have a table. I calculated this. What else can it do? Well, normally when we start to do calculations, for example, sum and average and all that, we'll end up using something called subtotal, like this. Subtotal like this, which if you look at it, has average, count, has all the functions that we normally use for numeric analysis, for example, right? Basic arithmetic, let's say. And so you go down, you see like kind of this thing. You can have all those axes of all that without using any formulation. So if you don't like formulas, tables automatically does it for you. Well, what do you mean, Jason? Well, look, if I click on the table right here, so like any part of the table, if I click on one cell, I go up to table design, and you'll see in the middle section where it says table style options. Do you see that? There's a box called total row. Right now it's not checked. When it is checked, it is a subtotal that will pop up at the bottom of your table here, and you can turn it on and turn it off whenever you please. Very similar to a pivot table. So look, I'm going to click it, and you see how the empty row gets entered by itself. So if I uncheck this total row one more time, see right now it's just automatically this. I didn't do any of this. If I uncheck it, going to table design, total rows, it disappears. So it's calculated subtotal for you. You want it to appear, you click it on. You don't want it to appear, you click it off. So if I click it on, now then the calculation is done for you. But I mentioned to you, you don't need to write the formula anymore. Well, yeah, yes. So if I go here, for example, you'll see a little drop down on the right-hand side. If I click it, it says sum. Well, I can just say, give me an average, or, give me the max, or give me the min. But I can only calculate one value, okay, or one formula that I choose. However, in the subtotal, you can see that earlier, you have the limit of average, count 8, all these arithmetic, and nothing else. So if I wanted to do like, an if statement, or if I wanted to run any other formulas here, could I do it in the table? And the answer is yes. There's a more functions right here. And I can go to more functions and I can write whatever it is I want. I can do a VLOOKUP, I can do a COUNTIF, I can do any formula that I want, and it will take me step by step through that process. And all I have to do is select it. So for example, if I wanted to COUNTIF, it will take me step by step, say, okay, range, and this is what I expect in the function, the criteria. And as you fill out each of the boxes like a form and you press OK, when you finish, this will calculate with that which you entered. Okay, so let's give it a try here. Okay, so the charge out rate right now is showing you here, but there's no overhead, there's no profit. Can you go to the base rate with burdens and give me an average of the base rate with burdens with this right now? So literally click there and select average. And see that it works exactly as I was showing you here. And then turn it on or off to see, like, I can hide it or not. Whenever I want to show it, I can display it. If I don't want to show it, I don't have to display it. And when you're successful in doing that, can you please give me a hand up? Perfect, Heather. Perfect. Got 6 hands up. And I'll just wait a little bit for maybe 1 or 2 more. So you can do this after you create a table. If you didn't create a table, none of this, you would have to do this manually with addresses and things like that. Yes. Perfect. Jose is good. So I think that's everyone there. I think if if not, please turn on your mic and let me know. Okay. Okay. So hands down. Now with this table here, there's more than this. This is not all. Okay. Then if I go to the table design here, I looked on the left-hand side. There's some interesting tools here. I can go straight from a table, linking it to a pivot, which we're not going to do right now, but we'll do later on. I can say remove duplicates, which it will go through all the records and make sure that there are no repeating rows in the same way. So when I say duplicates, meaning civil engineer, senior, F, 15 years, employee, exact same row is not going to be repeated. If I say remove duplicate, it will remove anything that is the same and only leave one case left here. Then I have convert to range, which you used earlier. And there is a button here called Slicer. And Slicer is kind of a what people really enjoy, kind of a, let's say, Power BI or a remote control, like something clickable and interactable with my table here. All it is, really, it's just a filter. It's a visual filter. You could have done the same thing, just filtering manually. But the difference with this insert slicer filter is that you can see patterns between your filters. For example, if I want to see, like a Pega category, okay? And I say all the A's here, and I press OK. Sorry, that's a bad example there. Let me see if I can select a couple more. A minus B, maybe these three. A minus, and B. They're all junior. So if I were clicking A minus, and B, I wouldn't be able to see like what is the content in the other columns normally, unless this is a very short data set. I say, oh, it's all juniors. But in the slicer shortly, when I show you, you will see that you can see patterns by graying out or not graying out. So let's do that right now. I click one cell in the data set as I did the whole way. I go up to table design and I click on insert slicer. I click on level. I click on, let's see, row. And I click on a Pega category and I press OK. And you'll see 3 slicers show up kind of like this. And I'm just going to place them on the top. They're not very nice looking right now, I know, but we'll do this for now just to show you what they're going to do. Now, you can see that when I shrink it up like this, well, sometimes, what if I want to see more? Like can it display in a nicer, more compact way? Yes. So if you, for example, in the row section and you're shrunken like me and you're like, well, I can't see everything. You can, at the very top, remember, when you make a table, there will be tools associated with it because it's an object. So are slicers. When you create a slicer at the top, you will see slicer tools. Yes. And only when you click on the object will you have the associated tools with it. If I click on the row slicer section, you'll see the first one, row. On the top in the ribbon, you'll see the buttons category. Where it says column right now, it's 1 column. If you go up 1, now it's 2 columns. Yes, so that I'm able to shrink it down to the size I need. The level 1's not too bad, but again, the Pega category, that's really long. Maybe make that 2 columns. Oh, that's enough. That'll fit it all in here. Yes. So now let's do something here. Earlier I clicked on A minus, and B. So if I click on A, and then I hold the control button and click A minus and click B, you can see that it exactly filters the same way I would manually do it. The difference is if I look at the level section here, I can see that junior is in my filter, but intermediate and senior are not, and they're grayed out. So it starts to show me patterns in my data that I wouldn't have been able to see unless I click on every single filter and try to figure out what's the pattern between the data sets. Yes. So for example, with this application of this, when I was doing shipping for trucks, every single day we needed to know which trailers are available and how much they cost and which ones are the cheapest and available, how much does it take kind of thing. I could use this kind of filter to filter my data, my trucks, my trailers, to see what's available and what's not available. And maybe down the line, if I had a timeline in here, which we did, I could see like, I don't have the trailer available now, but I can see that next week I have the trailers available. So this helps me, these slicers help me see patterns Even though it's just filters, it helps me see patterns down the line. If I had dates, I would put a slicer for dates and say, well, it's not available this week, but what about next week? Or which week is it become available? Anybody have any questions to this? Tables, very straightforward. The use of it gets tricky. Slicers, very easy to use, but very, the power is quite relevant here. You can see patterns behind here. Now, these patterns can be turned on or turned off, meaning I can choose to show these grayed areas, or I can say, you know what, if it's grayed, just don't show the data at all. I could do that as well. And that is, again, in the clicking on the object itself, the slicer, and then go into the slicer tools, and then playing around with the slicer settings will allow you to turn on or make your slicers look one way or the other. Any questions here so far? Now, there is one very important, very, very, very important section that I want you to please pay attention to. Tables can have slicers, right? Pivot tables can also have slicers exactly in the same way. If I were to make a pivot table right now with this same set, I can literally make the same slicer called row, level, and a pega as well. Well, how do I, if I have a table, and then I also have a pivot table, and I have slicers, these three slicers twice, well, what will happen? Will they interact with each other? The answer is no. If you have tables and slicers created for the table, then these filters, these slicers, will only filter, of course, the table, and it will not affect the pivot table. Same thing with the pivot table. If I were to make a pivot table of this, and I have slicers, row, level, and the pega, the pivot table slicers will only control the pivot table, and it will not control the slicers in the table. So each object and its own slicers are associated only with itself, and they don't interact overlapping each other. So make sure you understand that it's very important that you name these properly. So meaning what? Well, didn't we name it properly? We named the table properly. Yes, we named this table what? JSON. But what about these slicers? Did we name them? No, we didn't. How do we name them? We go to slicer. We go to slicer caption where it says row right now. I can say JSON underscore row. So when I do that, you'll see it says JSON underscore row, which is telling me, hey, this slicer is controlling this table called JSON. Versus if I just leave the title as level and a pega, then I'll get mixed up. As soon as I move them to another sheet, I'm going to have a problem here. So if you can here, can you change your caption of the slicers of the level and the pega to some kind of relativity to your table names? So if you named it JSON or table 1, then it should say table 1 underscore the column title. Give it a try. And put up your hand once you've done that. Play around, try to change the slicers, maybe delete them. Make sure that it is working. And if you have any questions at this point, please feel free to raise your hand or speak up, okay? So put up your hand if you've completed the steps that I showed you and you're on the same page as me, you understand everything, it's working okay. Put up your hand if you're ready to move on to analyzing data. Perfect. Perfect. Got 6 hands up. Ready to move on? Seven hands up. Perfect. Okay, so put all your hands down. Now, tables is the fundamental Lego block into dynamic update and more improved use of Excel for sure. There are, of course, times where you don't want a table. For example, in this particular case here, what if you didn't want it to continue to increment? You want it to be non-updating. You want it to run just based on a non-dynamic. Then yes, you don't have to use a table all the time. But if you want it to automatically update, table is one way of making it kind of update by itself or dynamic update. Once you have a table, the can of worms is opened up. What do you mean? Well, if you have Copilot or if you've heard of ChatGPT, when you have Excel, Copilot, and you try to use Copilot within Excel, I don't have Copilot with me right now, but if you ever have AI interact with Excel, the first question it asks you is, do you have a table? Oh, Jose, your hand's up. Do you have a question?
No, sorry.
Jose, did you have a question?
No.
No, yoga. Okay. So I'll continue. So the first question AI asks you is, do you have a table? What's the name of the table? And if you don't have a table, AI will say, oh, no worries. Let me create a table for you, which is exactly the same issue as this. Yeah. Now, if you try, feel free to try it. Okay. If you ask Copilot or ChatGPT to clean up the data for you, as we did, sometimes it's successful, other times it's not so successful. So it has to run through the same logic as we did, like by filtering and deleting. It still has to know what is the logic to cleaning up the data. So you still need, as great as AI is, and it's going to get better and better for sure. It's very much like Google Translate, you know. I used to work in Argentina, and my last name is Chow. So in Argentina, there's a lot of Argentinians last names Chow, and they're not Asian. So I did Google Translate for a very long time without people knowing that I'm Asian, because I literally Google Translate everything. However, when the grammar starts to kick in, of course, they start to pick out. My point in saying all this is that AI is really good and it's learning, but it's at its infancy. So a lot of times the grammar won't work perfectly. So understanding the concept and what a table actually does is going to be crucial in how you prompt AI and how you ask it to do additional things. Now, I'm going to give you an example of that right now. We have a table right here. So if I click on this table and Control A here, okay, and at the very top here, now this is not quite AI, I would say, but it's an attempt of Microsoft. If you go to Home here, and you go to the very right-hand side, and you should have something called Analyze Data. Now, I understand not everyone's going to have it. You need to have a Microsoft 365 to see this. If you don't have a Microsoft 365, you might not see this. Okay, so does everyone see Analyze Data in your spreadsheet under Home ribbon? Analyze Data?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So if you don't, put up your hand, okay? If you don't, put up your hand. That it probably means you have to update your software if your IT allows you. So Home, Analyze Data, if I click it, I don't have to do anything. It's thinking, and it automatically comes up with this. What is this? What is this? Well, I can tell you right now, it's a pivot table. A pivot table, or this particular one, is a pivot chart. A pivot chart cannot be created unless it has a pivot table. What does this mean? It means it analyzes your data set, and it says, hey, here are some suggestions of analysis for you. It may or may not be good, but these are some suggestions of a pivot table. And so I didn't do anything. All I did is just select the data, go to Home, and go to Analyze Data. And this popped up by itself. Okay. If I were to press the plus button, as you guessed, the pivot table will be entered automatically. So I don't need to do a pivot table. It will do it for me. Okay. Now it might not be in the way that I want though. So I may have to prompt it to do something else. So I keep looking down. There's all kinds of 3 different things, or actually 36 different analysis that you could choose. And maybe it's something that it'll save you time in creating it yourself. But you can look at all the 36 and say, oh, okay, what is actually analyzing? So if we look at this right now, we can ask it some questions like this. We can say like, let me move this a little bit here. So we can say, what is the average charge out rate per row column? And so you'll see something's not working quite right. You're like, well, that didn't answer my question. So when you want to do things like this, so what is the average chart? You can't just use it like this, like Google. What you have to do is you have to specify the columns like this. So if I say something like this, I'll say, let me move my my slicers a little bit, like delete them. And I'll go here, I'll say, summarize, and let me just see here, summarize, charge out rate column. So I'll put it like this, like an apostrophe, summarize a charge out rate column for each unique row column. I'll give that a try and see if it doesn't like it. So I just want to, so if you look at the bottom here, the way that you want to prompt it is just using the field name. So if you see like distribution field 2, field 4, what that is meaning is saying on your table here, function is field 1, row is field 2, level is field 3, and so on and so forth. So it's not recognizing my, so if I were to change it, let's say this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How many columns do I have here? I have 10 columns here. So let me see if I can do like average field 10. For each field 2. So average field 10 by field, I misspelled it, by field 2. So what is it talking about? It's saying, hey, look at the function here. No, field 2. No, look at the row here. Field 2 is C because A is empty. So field 2. And it says, okay, I'm going to summarize all these civil engineers. And what is the average charge out for the first 6? So you can see it already does it. If I click this, as I was saying to you, a pivot chart cannot be made without a pivot table. So it actually summarized for me the pivot table by itself, or it created a pivot table by itself. And it summarized that, and it averages the charge out rates because it's field 10. Then it creates a pivot table like this for me automatically. And so I can ask it, and just after this, I want you to ask some kind of question for it to summarize for you. But when I'm in a pivot table like this, as I was telling you earlier, that a table can have slicers, and so can pivot tables. So for example, if I were to click on the pivot table, you will see at the top, you don't have table design, but you do have pivot analyze and design. If you look at pivot analyze, you will have a section called slicer, insert slicer here. And if I click it, I will see field 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I can say like, hey, give me like field maybe 3 and give me the 1, 2, 3, 4, let's say. I press OK. And you can see I have this, and this for me. And I can say, hey, show me like A to C. So as I'm playing with filter here, nothing happens to my table, not here. Nothing happens to my table back here. But here in the pivot table, you can see that the chart updates. Why? Because the slicer is controlling the pivot table. So the pivot table is actually filtering with what? A minus, B, and C. And then my graph, my pivot graph, is updating with the pivot table. So therefore, it updates as well. So it kind of looks interactive, but all it is another slicer that I use. But the slicer is directly related to the pivot table and not the table itself. Okay, so without any more talk, I'm just going to delete these. I want you to ask a question, so I'm going to delete this one as well. And I want you to go back to the table that we've made. And I want you to prompt it to ask it any kind of questions before we go to the break here, so that you can get some kind of summary. So look at the information here of the functions, the rows, the levels, and then try to make it calculate something for you.
Hey,
And when you're
Jason.
done, Yes.
When I was messing around with this as I was following along, if you click on the headers of the table and then select all, it
Yeah.
allows you to bring the headers over so it's not referencing fields.
Oh, okay. Let me follow you along. Like, you mean like this?
Yeah, any of those ones gray at the top, and then
Great.
Control A.
This. Yeah. Control A.
And then when
Oh, sorry.
go into that analyze data,
Let's try that again. Good
you don't
call.
even have to highlight, you just select any of them.
Okay. I don't have,
So
like, you mean like this.
if you go
You mean like-
within the table, if you
Yeah.
click a value within the table, it doesn't
Yeah.
include the headers. If you click any of the headers and you
Yeah.
select all, it includes all the headers. So instead of the fields, it'll give you the
I see.
actual titles. So when you're prompting it, you can reference back to the titles.
I like
You
it.
still have
Thank
to
you.
use the quotations. So see how it says like overhead in
Yes.
quotations?
Yes.
You still have to do that, but
Thank-
it'll also prompt you as you're typing it in to select from a drop down to
Yes.
pick which one you want.
Love it. No, thank you for that. Thank you for that input. I was having a count issue there. No, I appreciate that. So please, everyone, give it a try. Try the auto analyze and ask them some kind of question to make it to do calculation for you. Okay. But as Heather was mentioning, really, really valuable what she said. Just click on any part of the title before you go to home, analyze, and you won't have this field 1, field 2 issue that I had. Okay. And when you're done, please put your hand up that you were able to do the prompting for analyze data. Perfect. Thank you, Heather. Perfect. 6 hands up. And I see some messages in here. Sorry, I was trying to show on the Excel stream, but I didn't. So everyone should be able to see the messages. So in case you're writing questions, I think everyone should be able to see it. Sorry, it's my first time kind of running the supply chain in Zoom. So if I have any glitches, excuse my experience here. Okay, perfect. Everyone's hands up. Perfect. All hands down. Thank you. Now, before we take our first break here, can I show you something that is so, for me, it was life-changing anyway, is the following, okay? Is the following. When you create a table like this, in the last, I would say 2 years, there's been a bunch of formulas that have been introduced in Excel. And after the break, we're going to go into formulas. But these formulas are very different than the formulas before 2 years ago, okay? And I will show you 2 of them right now before the break. They are incredible in the sense that they not only not care about the addresses, which a table, when we create a table, you know, we no longer care about A18 to A29, for example. It actually doesn't even do any of this. What it does is it will say, where's your table? Oh, here. And every single one of these columns are fields with arrays. So arrays a list underneath it. And so it's able to calculate all of this array without any addresses and not requiring any fill downs, but it will just calculate everything in one cell. In one cell. It sounds like a fairy tale, but can I show you in a second here? Stephen, you have a hand up? Oh, okay, Stephen's good. Okay, so can I show you now a good use of a table? And it's pretty incredible. And this relates to Power Query, Pivot Table, Power Pivot, all of it. It relates back to this. So if I were to do this, so I go back to my pivot table, I go back to my table here, and I convert table design. Actually, let me see if there's a easier way to do this than backtracking. I don't have let me see here, quicker way. No. Okay, I'm gonna go back to this table that we've created, and I'm gonna on-table it. Do you remember how to on-table it? We go to table design, convert to range. I say yes. And what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna create like the functions civil engineering. I'm gonna create 3 tables, 1 for civil engineering, 1 for mechanical engineering, 1 for project management. And why am I doing that? Well, what if I had 3 different departments with different information of cost or of contracts, and I want to consolidate? So typically in the past, we would copy and paste, or we'll load and transform if you're good at cleaning up data. But what if I don't want to do copy and paste, but is there a fast way to just like append all my data, combine or consolidate all my data together? And if you've gone into this, you're gonna love this. Okay, so I'm gonna convert this to a range, which I did. And when I click on this table, you should make sure that there's no table design at the top. I'm gonna add in some extra spaces. So these 2 or these 3, I'm gonna insert. Okay, and then below these 3, I'm gonna insert 3, just some extra spaces. Okay, and I'm gonna take these columns, these column titles back, and putting it here, and putting it here, very much like before we started filtering and deleting this. Yes. Now, if I click on the first section here, and it put up any time you're not following me, please put up your hand. Okay, so don't stay quiet. So I Control A, the first section, even though it has these extra lines, there's an empty row with no data in it. So Excel knows that, oh, this is a different data set. This goes along with the contiguity. I Control T. I say, okay. Now, what is the name of this table? It's really important. When I click it, I look up at the top, table design is called table number 3. I go down to the next section, mechanical engineering, Control T, and I repeat this process. You see, oh, it's table number 4. You see how it's iterating 3, 4, 5 kind of thing. So we'll do this one more time, and I'll go here. I'll Control T one last time. I press OK. You'll see it says table number 6. Yes. Now, if you have various tables combined or that are separated like this, and you want to combine them, in the past, a lot of copy and pasting. Now, all I have to do is write the following. I'm going to go right here in the middle. I'm just going to make my screen a little bit bigger so you can see. And I'm going to say right here. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, I need the title because the title is not going to be consolidated because the title is not part of the content. So I'm going to put the title right here at row 57. And underneath it, I'm going to write the following, equals V stack. And this is a new function that's in Microsoft 365 that deals with arrays. What are arrays? Lists. These lists could be vertical, like one column of 10 rows, or it could be X and Y. So an entire table, as you see up here, my tables here are X and Y of various sizes, right? But the thing that you have to be careful here is VStack will literally take the 3 arrays, the first table, second table, and third table, and it will add them on top of each other by itself. So what this means is the following. If I round bracket open this here, you see how it says array 1, array 2, array 3. An array is a table. A table is an array, kind of back and forth. Well, what is the first table that we made in this last step here? Well, it's in table number 3, and I tab, and it was table number 4, and I tab, and there's a table number 5, and I tab. Oh, I gotta be careful there. Table number 6 right here. And if I hit enter, you'll see the entire 3 tables, 3, 4, and 6 combined together automatically by itself. So if you have tables, consolidating data is a piece of cake. And what's even more interesting is this. When I update, you bet, that consolidation will automatically update by itself too. So what do I mean? Let me just delete this last one here. As in, that total there still remained there because when I convert it back to a range, the previous table's subtotals were still going to remain as is. So I deleted that. But if I go to row number 54 here, and I add another, I'm just going to copy and paste here. So I'm going to copy everything. Okay. And so just so you know, at the very bottom here, I have project management, and I'm at 57 here, right? And these zeros, why are they there? Because those zeros were following my totals previously. So if I go here and I paste this, you will see the zeros disappear. Well, what happened? Well, the zero is actually filled in with data. And as the third table, or the table number 6, is increasing, any additional information that's added in here will automatically be consolidated with this formula. So it makes consolidation really, really easy, but there's 2 keys here. Number 1, you need a table. Number 2, you need to know how to use VStack. And last but not least, if I were to show you the formula of this, you see all this information here, yes? This information is actually not there. What? Yeah, it's not there. You see all this? This is just for show. None of it is there. Normally, when we type a formula, we have to fill it down and it has to be stored somewhere, right? But with VStack, I'm just going to control gray symbol to show you. This entire array of results that you saw in consolidation is actually blank. Look, it's blank. There's nothing. All I needed to write was this literally one cell that says VStack and what am I stacking? And it stores only this. So if you get where I'm going, instead of storing many, many formulas and filling it down left and right and center, I don't need to. All I need to do is write one formula that deals with arrays. These tables can change in size, up, down, left, right. It will still consolidate them. But the key that I need here is I need to make sure that the column titles are all the same. If not, this will get larger or wider as we expect. And then you will get empties in some rows and empties in others because the columns are not matching. When I saw this, my mind was like, what a beautiful thing. Only if you can make a table. Ori, you have your hand up?
Question. So if we have to add another header, so to say, in the table, will it update as well?
If you add, so the thing with VStack is that it doesn't take any of these tables. It only takes the contents underneath.
Okay, so if we're adding another like header per se in the table, it won't update. We have to update the whole table.
No, it will become your content, which you probably don't want.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So that's kind of the pros and cons. That's why I copied and pasted the titles here. So before we take a break, can you give it a try and see if you can run a VStack with your tables and then try to add in a new record and see, does it update by itself? Give it a try. And when you've done so, put up your hand. Perfect. 2 hands up, 3 hands up. 4 hands up so far. Six hands up. 7 hands up. I think we're doing okay here. Oh, West. Okay. That's I was gonna show you one more formula here, but we can come back and do the other one. I've talked long enough. I'll give you a break from my talking here. Let's take a 10. Is that okay? So 11:13 right now. If you want to come back at 11, I'll give you the full 15 minutes. So 11:25. Okay, 11:25. We'll start again. I'm gonna pause the recording. And then if you have any questions, I'm going to stay here. You can feel free to come online and ask me, okay? So the topic we're trying to talk about right here is VLOOKUP or XLOOKUP or some kind of lookup function. And what we're talking about here on this file is, couldn't I, instead of an if statement and checking all these values and all that, couldn't I just say like, hey, the category here, if it's certain category, can I make it say certain things? I'll give you an example. In M right here, couldn't I use the function called unique to say, hey, can you give me a unique right here? And notice that I haven't logged anything, but you can see here's my unique categories that I have. And I'll copy and paste it as values. Yeah. And I'll say this is category. And I'll say, hey, I want to rename these, but I don't want to do it manually because when things update, I want it to automatically, make it easier for me on the update. So category here, these are my unique list. Great. And what do I want the renaming to be? So I can say rename. I said, hey, chemicals and PVF are MATL. These are MATL. I know it's kind of tedious right now setting it up, but when I start using the reference VLOOKUP or XLOOKUP or any kind of lookup, this will be very easy to update later on. Okay, so I'll show you that in a second here. Maintenance, inspection, and construction, we said, what is that? That's service, so SVC. SVC. So I have this array here, array being a list. And there's 2 dimensions. There's number of rows and there's 2 columns in here. Yes, I have not made this into a table. Should I? Probably. But I'll leave it as is, yeah? And I'll say, hey, I'll write a formula right here in this box here, and I'll make it a little bit bigger so you can see what I'm writing. I'll say equals VLOOKUP. Okay, and VLOOKUP is a function that many people use for decades and decades and decades. Some things we like about it, some things we hate about it, and it fails a lot. Okay, and the main reason I can tell you right now, if you haven't noticed by now, the main reason that a VLOOKUP particular fails a lot is that it's looking up the wrong data type. So for example, the number 1 can be a text or it could be a number. Well, when I'm looking up the value, am I looking up the 1 as a number or the 1 as a text? Because it could be either. But if that 1 number that I'm looking up in the table array where I'm looking this up is stored in a different data type. So if I'm looking up a number 1, but in my table array is the text 1, then I'll get an error because it doesn't match. So data type in here in VLOOKUP is extremely important, that you know what you're looking up, that the data type you know exactly, or else you're for sure get into issues. Okay, so how do I use it? All these things, if you never used a VLOOKUP before, the main purpose of a VLOOKUP is saying the same thing as if I had to manually do this. So let's say I have to VLOOKUP this category in D13 here, and I have to go to a book to say, oh, the maintenance, yes, and I want additional information about it, like, oh, what's the code, or SCV. Well, I have to manually look up maintenance. Oh, it's over here. Then give me back SVC. This is exactly what VLOOKUP does. Is it links up that information from where you're at to a new place that has additional information and brings back information that you don't have that you're looking for. For example, you're looking up a word in a dictionary and you're looking up what can the word be used, like is it a verb, is it an adjective? You want not the word itself, but additional information about the word. This is what the referencing function VLOOKUP does. So the part that's really annoying with this is that it's really long. So the next thing you need to write down is, what is a lookup value? The lookup value is what are you using to go to the reference to look up something. For example, if I'm looking up in the dictionary, well, I need the word in order to go to the right place in the dictionary to look up that information. So in here, this is my reference right here at the top between M and N. And my word that I'm using to go here has to be in the first column, but not here in the M or N. That's your reference. From where you're at, this guy here, maintenance, that's your keyword that you're going to the reference to look up information. So that's the lookup value. The lookup value is, what am I using to go to the reference in order to match that word for additional information, comma. Table array. Where is your reference book? Oh, it's all this. Now, if you highlight it like this, it's fine. If you highlight like this, it's fine, because category is nowhere inside here. So you're not going to have any different results. But, oh, my reference is here. Wonderful.
Hi, Jason. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
One of the participants were dropped out, so I let them in again.
Okay.
If you can just keep a track, if someone is trying to join in or in the wait room.
Oh,
Just
sorry about that. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll just.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Continuing. So we're just doing the VLOOKUP right now. Sorry that you were locked out. I'll try to keep an eye. So we're doing a VLOOKUP here. Why are we doing this? Because I don't want to do an if statement and then rewrite these if statements over and over when I want to add additional categories. So I can use VLOOKUP. But the very important key here is the first one was a lookup value, maintenance. Second one is your reference of where you are. Now, you notice it says M3 to N7. That's because I don't have a table name. If I had a table name, I could just say JSON, yeah? And it will highlight the entire table. So that's the convenience of this, is if I leave it as an address here, then I have to be careful here, because if I leave this like this, as I roll this formula down, this is going to move to 4, and this is going to move to 8 in the next row. And it's going to change to, so what does that mean? That means my reference is not going to stay here. It's going to move down to inspection SV starting. And it's going to move down to be as I fill this down. So it's very dangerous. If you don't understand what I'm saying, I'm going to leave this as is and show you what happens when I don't do that. Okay, so first things is, what am I looking up? What's my keyword? Second thing is what is my table array? My reference. Third thing is column index number. Column index number is kind of tricky to understand, but what it's saying is in your reference that you're looking at, each column is numbered by itself. So like the first column here is called column 1 or just 1. Like the field 1, field 2, field 3 earlier when we're doing like auto analyze or analyze data. So here there are 2 columns, my reference. So this is 1 and this is 2. So column index number that I'm asking for, that they're asking for is, hey, which column is the information that you're looking for located? Is it in 1 or is it in 2? And the answer is it's in 2. Last but not least, true or false. And I've done VLOOKUP for decades and decades and decades, and I never read this last thing. I'm just like, whatever, close it, right? But it's actually really, really important that you understand what this last thing is actually doing, okay? True, approximate match, and 0, false, exact match. There's actually a very important purpose for this. Usually we use exact match, meaning I have to match exactly maintenance in here for me to retrieve SVC. Approximate match doesn't mean, it does not mean, oh, if it contains some parts of this maintenance here, then return for me, blah, blah, blah. That's not what it means. Approximate match actually is used in particular with numbers. So for example, if I'm looking up a reference here, instead of maintenance, I have 100. Instead of inspection, I have 1000. Instead of PB, I have numbers in here, is the point. I can use the approximate match to say, hey, what I'm matching right now, instead of maintenance, what if I'm matching up 99? Well, 99 is not in 100, and 99 is not in 1000. It's nowhere there. So how would I match it? I would use an approximate match. And when it compares against a number, and it says 99, hey, 99 is not greater than 100, so it doesn't pass this first place. So it stays as, it will give you the first row of record. If I say, oh, the value I'm looking up is 999. Oh, it passes 100. So it'll move to the next one. It'll say, hey, I don't have 999, but I do have 1000. So approximately it's just below 1000. Therefore, it'll go to the second one and give you that. So whenever you're looking up numbers from a list that doesn't contain exacts, you can use approximate match. Whenever you're looking up a text or a number, so for the second one, but you have exactly the same content, is when you would use the exact match. So I'll do this. I'll close bracket here. You see how the first one says SVC. Why? Because maintenance, SVC. No problem. If I fill this down, is when the problem's going to appear. NAs, oh, I hate those. Why? Because when you filled it down, remember the problem I left is in the beginning, my reference was here. Then, because I didn't lock it or call it a table, my reference is now here. You see, the maintenance is not there, so I have problems. Then I go down to here, and oh, what happened? When NA, well, maintenance is no longer in your reference book, so as I can't find it, so I give you an NA. I give you an NA. Yeah. So how do I fix this problem? Well, very simply, if I call this a table to begin with, problem solved. And not only the problem solved, when I update, this VLOOKUP will never have issues because the reference is updating with the latest information. Much better than an if statement. But if I leave it as is, then the annoying part is I would have to go back to here and say, oh, right, this guy here, F4, lock it. And when that comes on, what happens is, as I'm filling this down, you'll see the locking mechanism keeps the reference and addresses in the same place, and it doesn't move around. So the better solution is make this a table. I hope table is sticking. If you make this a table, then anything can update dynamically. I would never have any issues in here, and much easier to work with than the previous if. If I typically would use for conditions, set conditions that are not going to change. VLOOKUPs and the following XLOOKUPs are lookup references that the references can update and my output can update as well. Okay. So I hope that is clear in terms of VLOOKUP. But because of the limit of time, I'm going to continue this, if you guys are okay, to XLOOKUP. And it's really important that I show XLOOKUP right now because I want to show you the difference. Okay. XLOOKUP is like ifs. It's like the comparison between if and ifs. XLOOKUP is much easier. If I use equals XLOOKUP, round bracket opening, you see there's so much stuff. Jason, you just told us that it's supposed to be easier, but it's like so crazy here. But remember, anything that's in square brackets are optional. So the real stuff that you need is 1, 2, and 3 versus the VLOOKUP where you get 1, 2, 3, 4 items. So you have one less to compare. And not only that, in the VLOOKUP, the weakness of the VLOOKUP is that it always has to reference the first column in the reference. If I were to reference something this way and I will go to the left, VLOOKUP can't do it. So then what do? I copy and paste, I cut and no. I use something called equals XLOOKUP. The purpose of XLOOKUP is exactly the same as VLOOKUP, but it's simplified. It used to be VLOOKUP for vertical lookup, HLOOKUP for horizontal lookup, and index match when you want to do something fancy that can look in any direction. But XLOOKUP is all of that which I just said in one function. Oh, in what sense? First, it says lookup value. That's exactly the same as before. So I'm looking up what? I'm looking up the category, comma. I'm just going to move back so you can see what I'm doing here. So I'm looking up the category, fine. Lookup array. So that lookup array can be 1 dimension, 2 dimension. When I use XLOOKUP, however, when I'm looking up, I don't highlight the entire reference. I only highlight where I'm matching this particular word. So I'm looking up in category, this is inspection. So which column has inspection? This column here. Perfect. So that's all you would highlight. But because I don't have a table, I have to F4 to lock it. And then comma, I got only 3 things to enter here. I'm looking up this word in this column, fine. Then it's saying, okay, and what do you want to return if that is found? So if I find inspection, do you want to return itself? Which array, where's the list that you want to return as results? Well, it's over here. So I'll F4. So what will this, and this is all I have to do. Well, and what will this do? What this will do is automatically find SVC or inspection, which I would go to inspection and then return SVC. Well, the result's exactly the same as VLOOKUP. So if you look here, let me just move to here, except a little bit shorter, right? But remember, when I have VLOOKUP, I can end up with NAs or like problems. Well, what do I do by then? With a VLOOKUP by itself, I can't do anything unless I add like if error to make it nested and more difficult to troubleshoot later on, right? So I can write additional nested function like that. But with XLOOKUP, don't have to do that. All I have to do is continue in my parameters. It says the next one, if not found. Oh, if not found, not found. Don't give me an A, just tell me not found, right? So if I say that, It gets longer, yes, but it's all in one. So what does that mean? That means if I do inspections, it'll say not found. Why not found? Because I have inspection, but I don't have inspections. So therefore, I jump to the not found. XLOOKUP gets a lot more fun than that. What if, it's just going to continue here. What if I say, okay, fine. So not found. Okay, so you see, like if I go here, I have the lookup value, fine, the lookup array, fine, return array, fine. If not found, okay, I have a message that says not found, fine. Notice that it doesn't highlight anymore because I didn't put in an additional comma yet. But then there's a match mode and there's a search mode, and you're like, what does that mean? If I put a comma here, remember what I explained to you earlier about if I'm matching an exact text or number, or if I'm matching a number, I can choose exact match or the next smaller item. That's -1. Or maybe I want to exact match and the next smaller item. So think about numbers. If I'm matching that, I can choose to go down 1 or up 1. Or if I say, I want to match anything that contains a certain word in it. Well, that's called a wildcard character match. Okay. And then you have a regex match. And this is, I won't go into all of them, but I think you need to know about wildcard character match as our last topic for today. And how it works is like this. I'll show you. For example, I have inspections. I have inspection, but I don't have any. Oh, actually, I'm going to change it. I'm going to change this to inspections. I don't have any specific inspection. I have inspections. Or I can even write like quality inspections. So I don't have anything that says inspection. I have quality inspection. So like I have an approximate. So can I still match it? Yes. The syntax is a little bit tricky, but your lookup value here, in the beginning, our lookup value was looking up inspection here, right? So when we're using the XLOOKUP, instead of just looking up D14, we would say something like this. I would say, and you need to write something. This is a little bit complex, but not really once you understand it. I would put double quote, star, double quote, and I'm just writing this syntax here for you to explain it before I apply it, okay? And star, like that, okay? So instead of just D14, I would look up star and D14 and star. What does this mean? This means whatever content of D14, which is inspection, if it's, the star means anything begins with, and the end star with anything it ends with. So what does this actually show? What it's saying is if the reference contains inspection and blah, blah, blah before, blah, blah, blah after, then yes, match it. So this is called a wildcard match. So I'm matching up something that's not exact by saying contains this. So to write the syntax, you need a star and quote in beginning, the and sign to attach it to your content, an and sign and another star to say, okay, but it can also end with new things like S. So my lookup value is not just D14, but it's this. And so when I get to the next option of choosing how I want to match it, I would pick the wildcard match to match the proper data. It's 1 o'clock, so I'm going to show you right now to just wrap this up, and we'll continue this. And feel free to practice this or come back tomorrow for me to show you this again. But I'm going to show you the answer right now. So I'm going to say, okay, quote, star, quote, and quote, star, quote. Okay. My array is exactly the same. My return array is exactly the same. If not found is exactly the same. So I'm going to put comma. And now the next match mode, I can say wild character match, which is 2. Yeah. And then the last one, I won't even go there yet, but we'll do it tomorrow. But if I hit enter here, you'll see my result is SVC. What the heck? How did you get There's no SVC here. Yeah, you're right. But I do have a wildcard. So anything that contains inspection even if it's like this, so quality is before it, S is after it, it will match it and say SVC. So I can wildcard match anything I want just by putting the syntax. I'm just going to make it big so you can see. We'll end the class today shortly. The wildcard here, I'm just going to highlight it, is how I would use the wildcard matching, which I couldn't with the VLOOKUP before. I would have to write a couple of nested functions in order to make this happen. I would have to evaluate. Can I still do it? Yes. I can still do everything that XLOOKUP does, but it's a lot more complicated because I have to nest it. But the XLOOKUP can do it all in one. I'm going to stop right here. And for those of you that have to go, I will see you tomorrow morning at 9:30. For those of you that still have a little bit of time, you can bear with me. Try this. Try this. And let me know if it works or if it doesn't work, okay? Thank you all for your time today. Right now, we're just wrapping up the class, and I'm going to end the recording just after this. Try the XLOOKUP, try the if statement. Tomorrow morning, we'll take up again, and I'll see you at 9:30 tomorrow, okay? But try this, and I'm going to stay on the call and take up any questions you have for the next 5 minutes, okay? I'm going to pause the recording.